The Minnesota Timberwolves have gone off to a very impressive start to this year's NBA season. They are currently 6-2, good enough for third place in the Western Conference. They are undefeated at home, and they have had some impressive wins already to start this season. Now, out of their 6 wins, they've already beaten 2 NBA powerhouses. Both of these came at the Target Center Arena, where they defeated the Boston Celtics in a close overtime game. Ant-Man was sensational in that matchup, and then they also blew out the defending champs, the Denver Nuggets, on their home court. So I'm watching the Minnesota Timberwolves through the first 8 games of the season. Their last game was against Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs. It has made me realize that this is a team that will not be in the play-in tournament this season. I think this team can contend for a championship, and I think they should be taken very seriously in this Western Conference. Now, when I look at this Minnesota Timberwolves team, the number one thing that stands out about them to me is their defense, their individual defense, and also their team defense. Now, right now, they have been the best defensive team in all of the NBA through their first 8 games of the season. They rank number 1 in defensive rating, and when we look at their starting 5, it makes a lot of sense. Now, coming into this season, all of the players, Karl-Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, Anthony Edwards, Coach Finch, they all talked about how they wanted to be better on the defensive side of the ball, and we see these guys rising to the occasion. Now, before we get into this starting 5 and how they make it so tricky and so troublesome on the defensive side of the ball, I just want to give you some stats to let you know how dominant the Timberwolves have been at the beginning of this season. Through the first 5 games of this year, 4 out of those 5 games, they were able to hold their opponents under 100 points. And just to put into perspective of how much they've gotten better on the defensive side of the ball, we look back to last season, the Minnesota Timberwolves were only to do that 4 times out of the 82 games. So already they're at the mark that they were at last year, and we still have so much more basketball to play. And also with this lineup that they have right there, it's really imperative that they use all of that size to crash the boards and dominate the glass. And so far this season, they've done that. First 5 games of the year, they have won the rebound battle every single time, and that's the first time that's ever been done in Minnesota Timberwolves history. So the defense as a collective has been really great for the Minnesota Timberwolves, and we look at their starting 5, it makes so much sense how they're so good on the defensive side of the ball. You have Mike Conley at the 1, you have Anthony Edwards at the 2, you have Jaden McDaniels at the 3, Karl-Anthony Towns at the 4, and Rudy Gobert at the 5. And when I give you this starting 5, what stands out the most, of course, is their size, and more specifically that size in the front court. Essentially, the Minnesota Timberwolves, they have 3 7-footers in their front court. Rudy Gobert, I believe he's somewhere around 7'1" or 7'2". Karl-Anthony Towns is said to be 7 foot tall right on the dot, and Jaden McDaniels, I heard he's grown to 6'11" over the summer. So I'm gonna just round up and give him the nod for 7 feet tall, because why not? We take a look at the backcourt for the Minnesota Timberwolves. We have Anthony Edwards playing the 2 spot, and he has great size for the position that he plays. He stands at 6'6", and he weighs somewhere between 225, 230 pounds. And to add on top of that size, he is supremely athletic. And then manning the point guard position, you have Mike Conley, who is in the later stages of his NBA career, but he is still a very savvy, and he still has great instincts on the defensive side of the ball. He's able to still do a great job of navigating through screens, whether it's getting under, over, or getting through the screen. Mike Conley has still been able to do that at this stage of his NBA career. So we look at this starting 5, obviously we have a lot of great individual defenders. You look at Jaden Ivey with his size, standing at 6'11", all of that wingspan, and he's very athletic, very mobile for his size. He's usually the guy guarding the opposing team's best perimeter player. And last season, whenever he did do that, whenever he was assigned that role, that player shot terribly on Jaden McDaniels. And part of that is because he is a terrific defender. We have a guy that's 6'11", he's very mobile. tremendous length on his arms. He can block shots. He can contest shots. He can navigate through screens. It's just a very nightmare it's going to be a nightmare for whoever he has to guard on that night. And the same thing with Rudy Gobert, another great individual defender, one of the best rim protectors in all of the NBA. This is a guy that has won the Defensive Player of the Year award multiple times. He can rebound the basketball, and he really nullifies everything that comes into the paint. Huge reason to why the Minnesota Timberwolves have the #1 defense in the NBA right now. And the same thing with Anthony Edwards, being 6'6". 6'6" is the perfect size to be a wing defender. And Anthony Edwards, with the dog that he has in him, paired with his athleticism, makes it really easy for him to give his assignment a tough night on the defensive side of the ball. And then we have Mike Conley and Karl Anthony Towns also giving their best efforts on the defensive side of the ball. So you have some guys that can guard individually, and what makes it special is when they can all communicate. And now you have five guys playing great team defense. And the Minnesota Timberwolves, you gotta love their defensive scheme. It's catered for the guys that they have out there. Remember, they're running with 2 bigs, so whenever those guys are on the court together, they're probably going to be running a lot of drop coverage, and they have the perfect personnel to do this because they have 3 guys who are known for their own ball defense. Like I said, Mike Conley throughout his whole NBA career has been solid on the defensive side of the ball. Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels, they can make a case that they're the best defensive wing group in the NBA right now, or I should say duo between those 2 guys. So it makes it really easy for Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert, whenever they are in pick and roll situations with those guys out on the basketball court, they can kind of play that drop coverage and hang out around the rim because you have those guys getting through and fighting over every screen. So that's what has really stood out to me so far this season for the Minnesota Timberwolves, is the defense that they're able to play. And then they also have guys coming off the bench that are great defenders. Naz Reid, who is very loved in Minnesota, and I love him as well. He's a very fun and underrated player to watch. And then also Nickeil Alexander-Walker, he's doing a great job coming off the bench and playing some defense. So defense has become this team's new identity. And then another thing that makes this team special is having Anthony Edwards on your team. And Ant-Man has become one of my favorite players in all of the NBA. He is really, truly fun to watch on and off the court. Looking at him in his interviews, when he's mic'd up, doing podcasts, press game conferences. Always want to hear what he's thinking, because 9 times out of 10, he's going to say something crazy or say something funny. And then on the court, you have to love him as a competitor. He's ultra competitive. You can tell he wants to win every single game. He has the it factor, and most importantly, he has that dog in him. He has that DAWG. But Anthony Edwards, he's just tremendous, man, and you can tell that he's a gym junkie, because since he's gotten drafted 2020 up until right now, we have seen nothing but steady improvement from Anthony Edwards. And I remember reading his draft profile. 2020 was the first year I started getting on camera talking about basketball, and something they said in his draft profile is that he's going to have to work on the consistency of his 3-point shooting, and that's exactly what Anthony Edwards has done since he's become affiliated with the NBA, because now it's not a weakness of his game, it's actually a strength, and it makes him so much more harder to guard because he's super athletic and he can get downhill and he can literally finish with the best of the best in the NBA. So now you add that 3-point shot to things, and it makes things very tough for opposing defenses. And Anthony Edwards, through the first 8 games of this season, he has been nothing short of spectacular. He's averaging 28 points per game, and what's standing out to me right now is his efficiency: 50% from the field and 40% from the 3-point line. So Anthony Edwards, I think we all, everybody over the summer is talking about how he's he's going to take a big leap this year, and I didn't disagree with a single person that said that, because like I said, we can all see it in him, man. He just has that it to him, that quote unquote it. Anthony Edwards has that. But he's been so fun to watch this season, and for his age, man, he's so mature, and I just see him becoming a better leader each and every day for this Minnesota Timberwolves. So that's another factor why I think teams should really take this Minnesota Timberwolves team very seriously, is because they have that man on this team, and they also have a tremendous defense, and then they just have overall good players, man. I think people forget how good Karl Anthony Towns is, and we got to remember he's coming off an injury, a calf injury that kept him out for 52 games last season. So even right now, I don't even think Karl Anthony Towns is still the best version of himself that we're going to see this season, but he has been playing solid so far. Rudy Gobert is a 2-3-time Defensive Player of the Year award winner. Mike Conley has been really solid his entire life, and then Jaden McDaniels has so much potential to him, not only as a defender but on the offensive side of the ball as well. And then you have Naz Reid, man. Naz Reid is he's a beast, man. 3-level scorer at his size. He can handle the ball, and he just gets that crowd going at the Target Center. But that's what I want to talk about with you guys today, man. The Minnesota Timberwolves, that defense is very scary. You have Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards and all of these guys healthy. They're going to be a problem for each and every night for whoever they face. But that's going to be it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed, please leave a like, comment down below if you agree or disagree, and then subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man, and that's curtains.